You made it. Welcome back, you BEA. Beautiful souls. SolidSol here, and today's video, I'm gonna be going over pretty much the entire cast and talking about what characters need nerfs. I'm gonna go over every single character on their nerfs, what buffs they need to be more in line, and make them a little bit more balanced and fun to fight against. Because my personal philosophy has always been, if a game is good, the character you play as will be fun to play against and fun to play as. So For Honor kind of has some of those issues on a few characters, especially some of these top tiers, and some egregious things with certain feats on lower tier characters too, and I would like those to get adjusted. Obviously, Ubisoft will have to spend an entire testing grounds on just feats alone, and that will take a long time, so let's hope they work on that after this testing grounds. In my opinion, I would want them to specifically revamp a bunch of feats, and I'll be going over pretty much the most glaring issues. I'm not going to be going over every single detail on what nerfs they need or what buffs they need, but some simple fixes to help them get started. And one more thing I want to say is that your mindset on fighting a certain character that you hate against is incredibly important. Sometimes you have to pick the character that you hate and learn the matchup, learn the animations, learn what their mix-ups, what they can and can't do. And I think learning a character fully before you make a judgment on if they need a nerf or a buff can really improve your mental when you find them in a duel or in 4v4. Unless you're playing a character like orocheat or varagian who basically has every single tool in the game, then I understand. But with certain characters that don't have every single tool, you can definitely learn to counteract that. Sometimes it's just a skill issue, a skill check, like hito, throwing heavies. If you can't parry those, and you're getting hit by those all the time, missing the parries, you gotta learn how to parry a little bit better. But when it comes to like unreactable offense, like afeera's shield bash, and of course her 20,000 feats that she throws at you, that can be a little bit more understanding on why it's so painful. So for orocheat, basically orocheat, he doesn't need too much of a change, since with the bash update, they did help his 50-50 tremendously. And the only thing, there's two possible changes that they could do. So as we know, his side heavy finishers are the biggest issue. Right now, it does 30 damage for a 700 ms heavy attack. That is incredibly fast. A chain one, so what he can basically do is external dodge attack, target swap that, so that he can clip people, so they can't even punish him, and use his heavy finishers to hit the person that's super far away from him. It's really good forward tracking, and it hits like a truck. So what they could do is they could keep the speed to 700. I'd be okay with keeping the speed to 700. It does make him pretty good in team fights. He's already really good in 1v1s, really good 50-50, and a really strong ganker with the Storm Rush and Infinite Kick. But what they could do is nerf the damage to either 27 or 28. He's able to get this so frequently. I'd say 27 or 28 is a decent number. But in my honest opinion, I think the best nerf would just be revert this back to 800. I don't think there was any issue on making this a 800 ms attack. I don't know who had or whose idea was to make it faster and make this character just ridiculously strong in team fights just by making it so that it would be incredibly hard to punish him. And that's probably why we're getting so much full block characters, because you can just sit in full block the entire time. But I think that change would help him out tremendously. And I think that's a pretty simple fix to make him a little bit more balanced, because most of the time you're not going to see that freaking heavy finisher fly your face. The other change I would do for orocheat is to basically make it so that he can't dodge cancel out of his dodge attacks. He can have dodge cancels anywhere else, but no more dodge cancels after a dodge attack. I think that goes for pretty much every character that has dodge cancels. The next thing I'm going to get changed is Ki. This feat, just remove it altogether. This is a really hard feat to balance, because removing stamina from you with no counterplay, disgusting. It doesn't belong in the game. Remove this feat or make it so that it only takes like half your stamina. Maybe that's just a maybe, because the cooldown is only 105, which is pretty high for a tier 1, and that's a good thing, but this is super egregious to fight against. Kunai, I think this cooldown should be increased to 60 seconds. The activation time is 4 ms, so it's very hard to punish. You will just also get hit, and if you dodge too early, you're still going to get hit when it's close up. So the kunai range hitbox is pretty freaking good. So 3 solutions: decrease the hitbox of the kunai itself, make the activation time 500 ms, and increase the cooldown to 60 or 90 seconds, since this is a projectile and has loads of utility and uses for any situation. Alright, so for Shinobi, this is such a tricky character, honestly. The way they reworked him was, it made him really cool and unique, right? Don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. This character does feel really unique to play as, but I think instead of the rework they gave him, they should just made it so that anytime you parried his ranged heavies, which he did have before his rework, he would just die instantly. Any light attack, any heavy attack would just deal 200% more damage. Just like 300% more damage, actually, so that he actually dies. And that would reward Shinobi players for not being a freaking bozo. And they would just kill Shinobi players who would act like freaking clowns. I think that would have been perfect, because some characters do need to be niche, okay? And they do not need to be competitively viable. If you make every character viable in the higher tiers, every single character, you make them all the same and boring as hell to play, and the game does not feel unique anymore. That's the problem with For Honor right now. They're trying to make every character strong as hell. And the thing is, Shinobi is quite unique, you know? They still kept a lot of his charm, in my opinion. They gave him some great versatility and chain pressure, and they still kept his sickle rain. His somersaults are a nice addition to his kit, and makes it so that his movement-based pressure looks awesome. When you look at Shinobi, he doesn't look like the normal For Honor character with the lights and the heavies. You see this guy freaking dashing around, doing some crazy-ass mix-ups, man. And all these flips and whatnot. Afeera is one of those characters that is really unique too, but the thing is that Afeera is basically untouchable, just like Shinobi. I don't think these characters need to be untouchable. They need weaknesses. They need weaknesses to exploit, and they shouldn't be able to do everything. The most glaring issue for Shinobi, in my opinion, is his ability to do double dodges and utilize a bash afterwards. Not just his side left into a forward dodge. That's completely different, and it's not that powerful. It's a really cool, unique tool for him, and it makes him feel like a ninja and something special in this roster. What I'm talking about is the two dodges to the side, whether it be a left-right dodge and then inputting a bash. That should not be allowed. They should remove that second bash so that the first bash is there to punish other people's offense or make a read on someone who's just going to do something in empty dodge and guard break. So that should stay, because most characters already have that, but removing the second bash makes it so that the other person that has like a light into undodgeable or light into a kick, he can't option select that as well. He has a dodge into another dodge that can go into the undodgeable input that the enemy is throwing, but that requires a little bit of skill and more of a read on his end as well. It's more of a skill check on both players. So high-level players will try to bait that out, and noobs will just basically get hit by it. And I think that would be a huge change to make him less frustrating to fight against. I think you also need to find a way to nerf the distance of how far he travels, because the way he can just maneuver around the map with his double dodges is disgusting. I think we have to change that, nerf that distance tremendously, either standardize it like they standardize recovery on dodges, just nerf it so that it doesn't go as far, because the double dodge in itself is already incredibly overpowered and makes him so he's a repositional god. Feats that I would change for him would be Kyai, of course, we already talked about this, and Shooting Stars needs to throw just 1 star. 1 star for 15 or 20 damage. It should not throw 4 stars. Otherwise, the Shooting Stars should deal 10 damage and throw a 3 or 4, possibly. Not even 4, I think just 3, because the amount of times you can land at least 3 shots with Shooting Stars during someone's mix-up is so astronomically high. I've landed so many stars. I've landed at least 2 every single time I've used this. Every single time. Getting the third one is not too hard, as long as they are super close to you and they go for a GB. It's actually disgusting. It's actually disgusting. It's a really good trade to use if you want to delete their HP bar. So this needs to get reworked to 10 damage and only shoot 3 stars, in my opinion. Cooldown is fine, and the activation time is fine too. There's a lot of tier 2s that are 300 ms, 400 ms like Kunai. But if we really wanted to go hard on it, bring it to 500 ms and standardize it. Afeera is another character that needs some nerfs. Actually, she needs quite a few nerfs to her feats and her kit itself. I don't think her base kit is that much of an issue. The base kit is fine, and it's pretty unique. Good defensive capabilities, pretty good maneuverability as well. Not as good as Shinobi's, but still very strong. But the thing about Afeera is that her neutral bash needs some more guard break vulnerabilities, because you can just essentially spam this as an unreactable offense and force reactions from them and just feign it, and also bait them out on dodge attacks, light interrupts, and all that good stuff. So a really good Afeera is just so scary. It's actually super scary. So increase the vulnerabilities of that move specifically, because it's just a nasty move. Like, I don't mind neutral bashes that are feignable, but you need to be able to GB them from a certain point, because you can just spam GB and it's not going to work. I think that would help a lot and make it so that she can't spam it and be as oppressive with it. The next thing I would change is remove the entire wall splat mechanic on her neutral bash, because if you get a heavy parry, you can use the neutral bash and land a left side heavy to to land another top heavy. Yes, they did nerf the damage, but the damage is not the problem with this kit entirely, because the damage is still going to be way above average when it comes to just a heavy parry. Punishes most characters in this game only get a 12, 15. Some characters get 16. Some characters get 18 damage total. And then the overpowered characters like Afeera and Centurion, who get 22 damage for Centurion. And then Afeera gets, I think they nerfed the damage, her top heavy to 25. So she gets 25. And then the left side heavy within her bash is going to be, what is it? I think it's 10 right now, right? It should be 10. So it becomes 35, I believe. Left, where's the left one? Yep, it's 10. So it's 35 damage total for a heavy parry when there's a wall nearby. Disgusting. Actually disgusting. And when you compare it to Lawbringer, who has to actually get parries, heavy parries, I think that's much harder than just landing an unreactable bash offense. It's disgusting on why they would think this is actually okay for the character when they just nerf damage values. If they actually just wanted to nerf damage values, which I would totally be okay with, nerf this to 1 damage. Nerf this to 1 damage, or actually, yeah, 1 damage would be fine, because then you'd be able to land a top heavy damage, which does 25. So 25 for heavy parry. If you wanted to make her actually unique, that's what you would do, because you made Impale 1 damage for the longest time. And so that's what I would change. Otherwise, I would just make it so that you would just remove that freaking property from her neutral bashes altogether. The only way she could get her left side heavy is within her chain kick mix-up. And I think that would be a lot more in line with the characters, because one, that's just a 500 MS bash, really fast, and it goes into her freaking 50-50s. These 2 feats, Gravity's Pull needs to be nerfed significantly. Cooldown needs to be increased to 120. The Speeding Comet needs to be nerfed for the cooldown significantly, at least 150 seconds. Ocelotl, this character is pretty tricky too, because he has really strong ganks. His gank is super overtuned. You can just do ridiculous amounts of damage with him. The only thing that I can think of maybe nerfing is maybe just his gank. So that would have to do with the testing ground stuff. Make it so that the pins and the timing is more strict on landing those undodgeables and those bashes in general, allowing you to escape some certain moves after a certain amount of hits done. I don't think you can change too much about this character without hurting him, because the issue with him is that his neutral bashes, he only gets a measly 9 damage. You know, Ocelotl, he needs a little bit more damage. Otherwise, they'd have to nerf or revert back his change, which I doubt Ubisoft doesn't like to revert their changes. They need to change so that his bash actually does damage again. I'd be okay with direct damage for his bash. That would keep him unique. A lot of characters don't really have that. The only character that really has that is Shugoki and Varagian guard, or Vaj as I call it, on her chain bash. And, you know, I'd be okay with that. But when they do that, I think they'd have to nerf his chain 400 MS light attacks. I would want them to be 500 MS afterwards, in my opinion, because he can just go into his bash mix up anyways and be unreactable. So having like 3 unreactable movesets, that would be pretty scary for chain offense and would make him pretty brain dead, in my opinion. This right here, tier 1, I do think it needs nerfs. I think you need to make it so that you can't regenerate a certain amount of HP when you use it. I think going up to like maybe 25% or maybe 25 health or 30 health is the maximum you can do, so that you can synergize this with your team well, because this one just destroys rotations in general in the game. You can back out with this 24/7. I do this any single time I die. This is his best feat to be using. If you want to use Tireless, go ahead and be my guest, but this one has so much utility, so much ganking prowess, that you cannot be not running this. It's so good. So you need to have a choice. You can't have everything, okay? Ventral Mark, they should just get rid of this. This is stupid. Why should you be rewarded for dying? Why should you be rewarded for dying and then giving your enemy that killed you a debuff? That doesn't make any sense. I think that's kind of silly. It's kind of interesting. Maybe instead of a defense debuff, have it so that they're marked and they maybe lose a little bit of speed, running speed. That'd be kind of interesting, in my opinion, instead of a defense debuff, because this is a pretty strong defense debuff. It's 15%. 15%, and it lasts for 20 seconds. Shaolin is a menace, pretty much stomping all the lobbies 24/7. Now, what I would change with Shaolin, it's mostly just his his feats, in my opinion. Like, his chi stance, really strong, really cool mix-up, really insane for team fights with strong crushing counters, dodgeables, chain kick, and a really good zone that can hit everywhere around him. But one thing that I would specifically nerf is his dodge attack. His dodge attack has too big of a hitbox, way too big of a hitbox, okay? This thing hits you from freaking Mars and Africa, okay? Hits you all the way over there, and you're just like, what the hell, man? Moving on to the feats. The feats are his biggest issue. I think his entire kit is fine, and it works, and it's fun. Of course, I would like them to revert a small part of his kit where he can't do an undodgeable top heavy. Instead, it becomes an unblockable, just like I was before, because I missed that. I thought it was cool, and they made him. They made an undodgeable top one because people would keep their guard on the left or right side and dodge, and also the top one, the incoming attack. But now that the guard is gone when you dodge, it's kind of like, come on, if you're planning to do that, why'd you get rid of the unblockable? The unblockable is super cool. It forced a reaction from players, and then they would go for the parry, and you go for a guard break. It's just, I don't know, man. Like, it's ridiculous. Anyways, moving on to key trap. There needs to be a timer for this. There needs to be a timer. Key trap can't last all game, because as soon as the shaolin wins the first team fight, you can go to spawn, and it stays there for the entire time. I'd say on certain maps, this is not a viable tech, but this makes it an egregious thing to play against. So, make this a timer for like maybe a minute, or a minute and 30 seconds. And then you have to replan it. Second thing is blink. Make this so that you can dodge it, because this is basically impossible to dodge. You need the strictest timing, The best thing that I've found is to do a back dodge, not a side dodge. Side dodges will track. Even dodge rolls, you can get hit by this. Dodge rolls, this is insane. Increase the cooldown for like 60, 90 seconds, and make it so that you can actually dodge. Because I remember when you could actually dodge this. When they reworked Shaolin, they improved this significantly. I don't know why they did, because this was a very strong move. In any situation, you could ledge with it, you could initiate offense with it. Super, super strong. Invigorate needs to be nerfed significantly. The health, okay, I think the health is okay. It could be, you can argue that the health is okay. It's only 8 health, okay? But the thing is, you have to land a chi stance attack. You have to land it. If a character blocks it or parries it, you should not be able to regenerate health for your teammate at an AoE effect, because this cleanses bleed, fire, Peacekeeper is useless, Nobushit, she loses all of her bleed. It should not exist to basically just delete a character's existence, okay? This needs significant nerfs. So what I said before, you can't activate this when someone blocks it. You have to actually land it. So that's a very good change in my opinion, because this feat is ridiculously overtuned. Vag, I would personally, I would change a few things about this character. Most likely, the glaring one is going to be her full block. Her full block is an issue. The full block itself, when it comes to like the punishes and stuff, I think it's fine. I think it's unique. A lot of crazy inputs for her. And I think it's fun to land full blocks. But the problem with her is that the pin is way too long. The pin, it just lasts forever. I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to last so long. And it's also cool that you can target swap the pin attack, but they need to change that ASAP, because the stance keeps you there forever. So let's just see how long it is. But the issue is that she can activate her stance instantly, just like aramusha. And it keeps them up here for a very long time. The pin is 1633 ms. That is a ridiculous amount of time to be stuck in place. Or just landing an instant full block that can be used on every single recovery cancel. Ridiculous, okay? They need to nerf the amount of time you are pinned for, okay? Because I know you have to choose between what character you want to hit with your heavy attack or your zone attack, but that should be a skill check. You need to decide fast on what to do, because the thing is, her freaking side heavy attack that's confirmed already, it has so much cleave that it doesn't matter what you use. Most of the time it doesn't matter, because you're going to be getting some nice guaranteed damage anyways, and you're going to be doing some incredibly healing with your feats. So this right here either needs to be nerfed on the entry speed, needs to be nerfed. The entry speed needs to be nerfed because she can do it on every single recovery cancel. It should probably be around the same start as Kyoshin's, because Kyoshin's is much slower. I believe Kyoshin's is 200 ms. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm pretty sure it's 200 ms from what I remember. No, actually it's 300 ms. The entry speed is 300 ms. So that is ridiculous. That is actually ridiculous. And so Kaze's stance is much more balanced in that regard, whereas freaking varagian can do it instantly. Just like aramusha. Aramusha is strong because of that reason, but it's definitely more of a skill-based thing, because aramusha, he doesn't stun you forever. He just does a 360-degree heavy attack, and so that's a lot more balanced. Like, that's way more balanced, because he can't punish like a bajillion things and keep them in place. Yes, he can punish people who external him with his fast heavy attack afterwards, which will hit, but varagian guard keeps you still for a very long time, and I think that's a little bit overtuned and not fun to play against, in my opinion. So, and the other thing I would change is side dodge attacks. Remove the crushing counter properties. She does not need crushing counters on her dodge attacks. Makes 0 sense. Actually 0 sense. Her forward dodge, light attack, yeah, you can keep the crushing counter properties there, but her side dodges makes 0 sense to me. It makes her way too safe, in my opinion. Way too safe. Take shelter, needs nerfs, needs to heal at least 5 HP, or maybe just 3 or 4. This is way too much healing for a full block that can be used so much and spammed so easily with having little to no the risk. It's a low risk and then a high reward. Everything else is okay, in my opinion. All of her feats are okay. It's just her tier 1 that's ridiculously good. Hito carry is pretty simple. Make it so that she can't have hyper armor or neutral heavies. I don't know who was playing For Honor or what Reddit tard decided to think that Hito carry needed buffs in that regard. Like, having a buff for her neutral heavies where she can utilize those all the time and trade mindlessly. The issue with Hito carry when she was first released is that she had hyper armor on everything, on all of her heavies, and people didn't like that aspect. It's not fun fighting a Hito carry who can just throw heavy attacks 24/7. I personally don't have too much of an issue with Hito carry because it's fun pairing her heavies. It is unreactable because there's so many variations, so many variable timed heavies that she can throw, but I find that fun. But for most players who can just throw heavy attacks 24/7 and not consistently parry them, I don't think that's as fun as the devs think it is. And I know they don't play their game, but I think this would be, I'd say most of them don't play their game because you don't have time to play For Honor 24/7 when you're developing a game. There's just not enough time throughout the day. Whereas Hito carry, you can just keep throwing attacks. She's a really good starter character that can just absolutely dominate the battlefield. So removing that hyper armor would just fix so many issues for her. We can also talk about the tracking on her forward dodge heavy, having it so that people who actually try to dodge roll away from your kick mix-up can actually have some good tracking. So adjust her tracking on her forward heavy so she has a dodge roll catcher. And that would be perfect for her. She would be a good character. She doesn't need more hyper armor. That's just stupid. She is and was already an insane pub stomper. She didn't need any more buffs. What she needs is just adjustments to her kits. More hyper armor, just slapping on hyper armor is such a lazy fix to any character and making them more powerful while dumbing them down. Honestly, dumb characters, really easy characters to use, need to be weaker in general. Characters that have a high skill curve need to be really hard to use but have a good potential, high potential of kicking some serious ass in the lobby. Berserker, remove the dodge cancels on his dodge attacks and it should be a simple fix altogether. That's super easy to do, and then his kit would be fine. I didn't think he need dodge cancels on every single move. I think he would have probably benefited from a dodge cancel on maybe a light whiff, which he did have, or light confirm, or a heavy whiff and a heavy confirm on finishers and neutrals, but not on pretty much every single attack. I didn't think he needed that at all. For Medjay, he's recently new now, so I don't really have any strong opinions on him at the moment. He's still really S tier in my opinion. A lot of people aren't going to be pairing your Nomad Swing, and you can mix that up with raw heavies as well on your chain heavy attacks. But I don't think too much of an issue with him. They're still going to be reworking the gank aspect of his pin, so maybe that'll get adjusted. But at the moment, I think this character doesn't have too many egregious things besides maybe his astral projection, which does 77 freaking damage. I'm going to be objective here. Medjay is one of my mains, so I do know some really strong traits about this character, and it's mostly due to the fact, first of all, I think they should buff him and give him a little bit more damage, maybe 11 damage on his neutral bashes. This tier 1, yeah, so tier 1 right here. After a kill, gain a buff that lasts until death, depending on the mode you were in and got the kill. A kill in staff mode grants 10% defense buff. That's really good, and that's everywhere. That's not just on a point. And a kill in axe mode grants a 10% damage buff. That is really good for a tier 1 in my opinion. Like really good. Now you can say that since he has low damages from the start, especially on his neutral bash, getting this tier 1 would be really strong, but I think overall this stacks up and it's just super good. Like his finisher damages becomes 30, and then I think his neutral heavies are 23, and then they get pushed up to 26. I mean, that's not too bad. Orocheat and Shinobi, they have 26 damage heavies, but for Medjay, I don't know. I think it's pretty freaking good in my opinion. It could be balanced. It makes him pretty strong. Not too borderline OP, but I think it's pretty ridiculous, especially when we take into consideration his huge hitboxes on his heavies. And I don't know, so let me know what you guys think of it. I think it might need some toning down, but a little bit too strong. And in conjunction with his astral manifestation, it's supposed to do 70 damage, but it does 77 damage at the end, and that's a pretty good move. But this is a fast projectile, man. It's a really fast projectile, and it goes super far. So otherwise, I'd swap Sunshine Strength as a tier 2 and then move the Moonlight Drain to a tier 1, because this is pretty strong too, but it's not like that great. The only good thing about this one is the staff mode, which lowers defense by 15%. I think it needs nerfs. Okay, moving on to BP. BP, pretty simple. Oathbreaker, remove that shit. Remove that shit. Get that shit out of my game, dude. It is so unfun to play against. I don't know how this feat has lasted the test of time. I don't know how it hasn't been changed yet. This is such an unfun feat. It is probably, I think it's the most unfun feat in the entire game, because it has zero counterplay. Actually, zero counterplay, because their stalling is part of the game. 1v2ing is part of the game. Getting revenge, you should be rewarded for their bad plays on not ganking you correctly and not feeding you revenge. And that's why we have people who just heavy feint spam or unblockable heavy, so the other person can 1v1 and you can peel for them, which is a totally fine play. Not everyone, especially solo queue players, are going to be doing the perfect amount of ganks, okay? You can do easy ganks, which is bash light into a heavy, into a guard break, so you can land the finisher heavy on your teammate and blah blah blah, but Oathbreaker should not exist, or Oathbreaker should remove only half of the shields, and you can't use it preemptively. You can't use it preemptively. Boom. Bare feet should not remove all the shields, because that is just so unfun. Super unfun, man. Just disgusting feat. I would like to get all the devs, and we should all just run like 4 BPs and then just feed them revenge and then just freaking destroy all of their shields afterwards. Then they'll know how it feels. Not a fun game mechanic. Remove that shit. Get that shit out of here. Alright, Jane June he's one of the top tiers, super good all around. I don't know, man. I personally, I think his zone, his Sifu stance zone needs nerfs. It shouldn't be unblockable. Either, if it's going to be unblockable, I think they need to slow down the speed, because it is 600 MS. It is 600 MS. It does 16 damage too. So they need to either slow it down to like maybe 700 or something like that, so that it's much easier to tell when it's coming. Like, even though it's 600 MS, in team fights it is super strong, because you can get hit stun and stuck in the middle, and then you'll get hit by 16 damage, and then being stuck in hit stun, and then just the finisher unblockable heavy that's coming, that's not even target towards you, is probably going to hit you anyways. And so I think that'd be a nice change. Slowing it down or removing that aspect, either make it so that it becomes a 500 MS normal attack, a 500 MS zone attack, which would be fine in Sifu stance, and then make it so that he could just not have any unblockable properties, because having a normal property as a 500 MS zone within Sifu stance allows them to Sifu attacks and then punish accordingly. You don't have to get a guarantee attack on it, because it already has so many good properties. Sifu stance has iframe, Sifu stance has ability to reposition and also regain stamina back even when you're OOS. Even when you're OOS. You could argue that you should only be able to regain stamina when you're OOS, when you use it, and not be able to regain stamina when you have stamina. That could be another option, but I think just removing the aspect of the unblockable property or slowing it down tremendously would make the character fall in line with the rest of the cast and not be so abusable, in my opinion. Nobushit is another character that needs nerfs and buffs at the same time. Now, this character is pretty freaking... I'd say she does have a pretty bad reputation for a lot of players for a good reason too, and it's mostly due to her insane iframes on her dodge attacks. I'm okay with her having insane iframes on her dodge attack because she's a really strong team fighter, which is great. But the issue with her is that her dodge attack, when you're getting hit, when you're in revenge, and she's spamming her dodge attacks or cobra strikes, you can't guard break her. She moves away from you, so they need to find a way to adjust that. Because when you're doing a heavy feint, or you see that she's spamming that shit, it can be very hard to parry that because you can also get hit and hit stun from other attacks and herself. And while she is like while she's only like 5 feet in front of you, you can't even guard break her because for some reason she like goes back more. I've noticed this as a Nobushit player that you're incredibly safe when you're spamming this, like really safe. The only time you're not safe is that if you just spam it from neutral and they're not doing anything. And so the bleed stacks up on you when you're in revenge, and it should not do that at all. The bleed should be nullified. It should just get removed altogether. So that needs to be changed about this character. Because the bleed is just way too strong on someone who actually gets revenge. The next thing I would change is basically, this is going to be tricky. I'm not going to talk too much about her chain bashes, because you could argue that you could have a 500ms chain bash, and you can keep the undodgeable heavy, of course, within her her bash mix-up or 50-50 mix-up. But the problem is that it wall splats. The chain bash wall splats, and if you get a light and the person is bleeding, and then you land that 500ms chain bash, which is pretty fast, and then you land a wall splat, you net another freaking 24 damage heavy. It's going to be 27, I believe. Actually, no, I think 29, because there's a 20% damage increase. That's why she is so powerful, because she can swing team fights incredibly fast because of her high damage values. And that's going to be pretty overtuned, in my opinion. Pretty overtuned. The only way you could probably go away, fix that, is essentially to make it so that the travel distance on her wall splat is not that high, or not that far, because the kick pushes you quite a far distance, in my opinion. It's pretty far. You can land some gnarly damage from a neutral kick. You can go into hidden stance, have enough time to go in hidden stance, and utilize your undodgeable heavy finisher, which will deal so much damage. And so that in itself, I think it would be okay, but only if they nerf the distance of how far you could travel. Like, make it the displacement around afeera's, maybe afeera's distance, or maybe not even that far. That would keep her unique, and make her so that she has actually good chain offense. But of course, a character like Nobushit, you don't really need good chain offense to an extent, but I think characters actually need viable chain offense. If they're gonna have no neutral offense, which I am okay with, then chain offense should be strong. It's kind of like Hitakiri. There's no real chain offense, but her chain offense, I mean, there's no neutral offense, but there's very strong chain offense, you know? It's like you're kind of in a blender, but there's plenty of ways to counteract that. When she gets a bleed, she should have enhanced lights. Boom. Enhanced lights. Boom. She has neutral offense now. Very strong, just like Peacekeeper. You have to go into her 50-50, 500ms bash, and into undodgeable. Boom shakalaka. I think some people have suggested to nerf her Way of the Shark. I'm okay with nerfing Way of the Shark too. To maybe just give her like 2 damage on every single move if they're bleeding. I think that'd be okay too. And with that, we move on to Shugoki. Shugoki, he's okay. The only annoying factor about this character is his forward dodge bash, because people with dodge attacks now, they can't really punish him that much. You have to basically take the trade on his heavy attack. You can block in time, but it sucks for characters like Peacekeeper who have to land that finisher, the finisher bleed attack riposte, because you're not going to get full damage. You're going to get a measly freaking 8 damage, I believe, and it sucks. So I think the hyper armor needs to start up, has to have a later startup or something, because the side dodge bash is fine, but the forward dodge bash, you can go to your heavy mix-up like right away to punish people. Super strong. It's a very strong move if you don't have a dodge bash. If you don't have a dodge bash to punish him, it's gonna hurt. Unless you have dodge cancel recoveries like Berserker and Orochi or hyper armor like Berserker to trade with him, it's a different story. Completely different story. That's really the most egregious thing about this character. Otherwise, like, he's in a pretty okay spot. The only buffs that I would probably give him is that if you get a guard break when he has like maybe revenge, allow him to, I don't know, maybe get a new heavy attack that gets him like 24 damage or 22 damage, that he doesn't have to always commit to Demon Ball, because when you're in Demon Ball in revenge, you can't really do anything besides using a zone, which is a really low damage attack that goes into your mix-up, sure, but kind of stuck that. But of course, you can also argue that the character doesn't really need all of that because he's a unique character altogether. But I think that's one of the most egregious things about this character. I don't think there's too much changes that this character needs besides the bash change and then the heavy input change, because there's so much utility for Demon Ball already, where you can just argue him as a staller instead of someone that can finish anti-gank. There's only a few characters that can anti-gank really well and consistently, and you know, that's like Black Prior, Shaolin, Orocheat. Those characters are really, really good. But for shugoki, he kind of remains like a niche pick when it comes to that category, but he's really good overall on a lot of situations. Centurion is, he needs some nerfs on his heavy parry punishes, because he is such a strong character in Dominion with Haymaker activated. The problem is that a couple patches ago, he was able to get a punch after a knee follow-up, and I don't know, I don't think that was intended at all. I'm 99% sure it is a bug, and they did not decide to punish heavy parry, they did not decide to buff heavy parries in general, because the Centurion we already know that Centurion has really good punishes when you're near wall splat, but now he gets really good punishes when when he's not near a wall. So he basically is the parry god, and that's kind of a good thing. I like that aspect about him, because he definitely has some drawbacks in certain areas like team fights and anti-ganking. After a parry, you get the knee follow-up with Haymaker. It's 8 damage. Oh, it's 5 damage actually. Sorry, 5 damage into a punch, which is another 5 damage, and then into a light attack, which is 12 damage, and that is going to equal the 22 damage for a heavy parry. 22 damage. It is one of the highest parry punishes in the game without a wall splat. Actually, I think it is the highest parry damage in the game without a wall splat, because afeera needs her wall splat, otherwise she just get 18 damage, and that's super fun to play. Like I totally understand why it is a super fun thing to do with Centurion, because it makes him incredibly unique, and that's why I don't think he needs too much of a buff in general, because he's a really good pick right now. If you know how to play him well, he is disgusting, actually disgusting. There's a few things that I would change about him though, is that after, you know, it's kind of hard to do, I'm sure, for the devs, is that, so you know how you're in an anti-gank situation, and there's a few situations that happen usually when you activate it, they get auto-parried, they fall to the ground, or you throw them, or you parry them, and you don't want to land Eagle's Talon because it keeps you in that long cutscene, which looks sick, mind you. I would like an option for the left or right side heavy to just be a side heavy, you know? And if you have your heavy attack on top, your guard on top, that would be Eagle's Talon. I think having the option between that is really powerful for him. It won't make him like incredibly good at like anti-ganking. He does have some really good tools with his chain bash and whatnot, but that would be astronomical. It would change him significantly and make him more accessible and give you different tools for different situations. Another thing I would change is that they need to fix people double dodging his charged bash, because if you dodge it early, you can do another dodge and it doesn't track. So fix that, Ubisoft. I'm sure they're having a lot of issues with that. I remember them talking about it. They can't just solve it in one go, so I understand that aspect about it. Besides the parry punish, fix that as well. Make it so you can't punch afterwards, because with Haymaker, it's incredibly OP. Really overtuned. Otherwise, you'd have to nerf Haymaker altogether, and it would ruin it for characters like Gladiator. I do like that aspect of Centurion, getting like 2 really cool hit stun property attacks to make it feel like a really cool animation, but they'd have to make it so that his kick doesn't count as a bash or like a throw or whatnot, you know? Like his knee follow-up doesn't count, but his bash could count. That's one thing I'd probably like change and adjusted. And then of course Pugyo is the one that needs to be changed. This needs to be slower. It needs to be 400 ms or 500 ms. I think people abuse the shit out of this, and it's his best tier 3. Aramusha is another character that I don't think really needs too much changes. I think he's in an okay spot. I'd say he's one of the more balanced characters. The only thing that would need changed is Juggernaut. Juggernaut in general, I've said before, is that it needs to be changed. It's pretty freaking ridiculous on having so much utility overall for a tier 2, and it's only 90-second cooldown. I think it needs to be increased to like 120 seconds, 120 seconds. I think that'd be a good nerf for Juggernaut, or just move it as a tier 3. I don't think Aramusha really needs any buffs. Personally, I'd like him reverted back to what he was beforehand, before they reworked him. and also just give him the side heavy into a confirmed top light back in the day. But you know, that's the old Aramusha in me. Aramusha's I think he's a very strong character right now, fair and balanced, not too strong, not too weak. Very good player that utilizes him to his full extent is going to absolutely destroy lobbies and be a pretty good staller too. Kyoshin, he needs a few adjustments in my opinion. He's basically black prior, but I think the biggest change for Kyoshin that I think we need to look at is essentially, let's just go over here. I think it's going to be his Kaze stance. His Kaze stance lights needs to feed more revenge. Needs to feed way more revenge. It needs to be like Shinobi's. It needs to be like Shinobi's Sickle Rain, because they made it so that Shinobi Sickle Rain would feed a lot more revenge on those light attacks, because you could delay for so long and keep your opponent stagnant there for so long. And Kyoshin has the same property on his ganks and his Kaze stance lights, so that needs to be changed and make it so it feeds more revenge. The gank itself is okay. I know it's pretty nasty, and Kyoshin's a very nasty ganker character. In 1v2s, you're basically dead. But the Fujin cuts needs to be nerfed significantly. I think that's a really ridiculous move that they haven't actually decided to touch yet. Otherwise, there's not too much of an issue with Kyoshin in my opinion. I think he's a strong character. His Kaze stance can also be baited out pretty well if you are a smart player. Pirate is a character that needs nerfs on her dodge cancel recovers. Nerf that aspect of it, and I think the character would be just fine. Valkyrie is another character that doesn't need too many nerfs. I think she's in a really good spot right now. Warlord is in an okay spot. I don't think he's super weak. I think he's actually really strong, especially when used correctly, and you can just use hyper armor attacks on his neutral heavies and finisher heavies, deals a shit ton of damage, has a ton of ledging potential. So I don't think his base kit really needs too much of a rework, actually. The only thing I can really think of is maybe adjusting his stamina values on his full block attacks. And what I mean by his full block attack is that he also has a headbutt full block counter. So when someone hits his full block, he can use a headbutt right away as like a really cool move, but it does so much stamina. It takes so much of your stamina. It does also do stamina damage too, but it uses so much stamina, so they decrease the stamina usage on that move you want to do, because usually you always want to go for the guaranteed light attack follow-up that is guaranteed to go into your mix-up afterwards with your enhanced light attacks. But I would really like that change, because I love using Warlord and I want more utility and uses within his full block, because his full block is incredibly underrated. A really strong character overall. Personally, I do think he needs a nerf though, actually, now that I think about it, as a Warlord player, on his throws. Like, his throw itself, the distance doesn't need a nerf, but the stamina damage that it does needs a nerf. I think it should do a little bit of stamina damage, but the amount that it takes away, it probably takes away, I think, like 1/3. I think it might even do more than 1/3 of your stamina, but it does like almost half your stamina bar, and that needs to be halved. Okay, it needs to only do maybe 1/4 of your stamina, because that's really strong. It's one of Warlord's clutch potentials. But other than that, his feats don't need too much of a rework. Warmonger is, I think she's in a pretty good spot right now, in my opinion. A pretty good spot, not like too overpowered, overbearing, besides her freaking corruption stuff. I don't see too much of an issue with corruption blade. I think it's one of the most powerful tier 1s in the entire game, but it doesn't mean that it needs like huge amounts of nerfs, because the AoE thing is only 10 damage per tick, and most players back away or dodge roll, and so it's not, there is some counterplay when you get hit on it, but otherwise I don't think she has too much of an issue. I'd say maybe her tier 4 is something that might need nerfs, because this is game winning. As soon as you pop this, boom shakalaka, the enemy is dead. So I don't really have, I don't think this is too much of an issue, but I know that anytime Warmonger uses this, she's won the team fight already. I'd say 9 times out of 10, you have won the team fight once you use this and land this at least 2 people. Either they nerf the AoE of this, so like maybe 8 meters, 6 meters, something like that. I think that would be a good change. The AoE is pretty freaking large, so I think that'd be a good change, nerfing the AoE. So what do you guys think about that? Moving on to Gryphon. Gryphon needs his chain kick to be non-guard breakable. I think that's the most important thing. Keep it fire MS, make so that's non-guard breakable. People who have dodge, everyone has a dodge badge, everyone has a dodge attack now, you can punish it easily. I think that's the biggest change to the character. It makes him a lot stronger when it comes to chain offense, because he's a really underrated, really strong pick, and he does feel pretty balanced in comparison to the rest of the cast. Kensei is a character that I don't really think I'd need to change too much about this character, man. Probably the biggest thing I'd say is his heavy, soft feint, light attacks to catch people who dodge. It needs to be undodgeable. I think that would help him out tremendously. because people who dodge the pommel strike externally, they should be punished because that's supposed to catch dodges. It's supposed to catch dodges, but most of the time it doesn't. And so I think that'd be a nice change. It would just make it more consistent or just improve the hitbox overall. So that's one change I would make to Kensei. Lawbringer, okay, revert him back, dude. This is ridiculous. He gets an impale and heavy attack, but the impale does 1 damage, and the follow-up heavy only does, like, I don't know, like freaking 18 damage, okay? So 19 damage total, or 18 damage total, 17 damage chain heavy attack, with a unique animation, so that it counts as a different move, and then you go into your chain offense afterwards. Boom shakalaka, Lawbringer feels like Lawbringer. That's all you need, baby. Or just let him have a light attack, or decrease the range of how far you can push people to the wall. The displacement can be nerfed significantly. I don't care, bring it back. You just need to bring the impale back, and then all the Lawbringers will praise you, okay? I'd say like 99% of the Lawbringer players were fine with the tier 2, the Testing Grounds 2 iteration. All you have to do is reduce the damages, man. Just reduce the damage values. If we're gonna do 15 damage total on an impale into a heavy attack, I would be okay with it. Like, yeah, again, it's not gonna hit that hard, but it's gonna feel satisfying to use the impale because having more than a couple of inputs makes the game more fun, and it rewards you for pairing and all that good stuff. Pairing is not easy to do, okay? As some people would tell you that pairing lights and heavy attacks are easy to do. It's really not. It's really not. You should be happy when you parry a light attack and a heavy attack consistently. So I think that's one change I would do for Lawbringer. And of course, give him a roll catcher. Come on. Tiandi, I don't think he needs too much changes. Pretty well balanced character, really strong 1v1s and 4v4. Zhanhu, he's another character that doesn't really need too many tweaks. I think he's a very strong character at the moment in this meta. Raider, I think he needs a roll catcher. To be fair, he has like really cool utility and niche when it comes to Stampede Charge. So he has that role already. And you could argue that he doesn't need a roll catcher, but for anti-gank situations, I feel like he kind of does. Because the stunning type doesn't catch rollers, and I think it needs to, or he needs a new move that catches people. Because he's a good character. He's a good character, but he gets outshined by a bunch of these characters that can also, like, well, Pirate breaks through hyper armor, so he's practically useless in so many ways because his heavy attacks are really slow, and he gets broken out of those. Gunner doesn't need any tweaks in my opinion. Really good character. He is exemplary, in my opinion. Really exemplary and definitely underrated. A lot of people play him because he's incredibly high damage values once you get those wall splats, and of course, in conjunction with his tier 1 healing and his tier 3s and tier 4s, actually game-changing. Gladiator, he needs nerfs on his skewer. His skewer does too much damage. It's 37 damage, and it needs to be reduced to like 24 or something. For deflect, most deflects are 22 damage. Shaolin's is 20. And Gladiator needs his nerf to 24 damage because it's just way too high. Because he also gets like his skewer and his deflect. I think they should be like different properties or different moves. Because his skewer, I think it's okay if it does a little bit more damage, like maybe 30 bleed damage. I think that's fine. 37, that's just super high. And I think that's way too high. That's like pre-CCU era. The one thing that I would probably change with the character is just give him dodge cancels after a toe step. I think that is it. He should be a little bit mobile because he doesn't have dodge cancels in general as an assassin character. Or someone who has basically no teamfight capabilities, no anti-gank capabilities, okay? So let him dodge cancel out of the toe stab. And I think one more thing I would change is adjusting his zone attack. Either not have it be feightable so that you can actually punish it. It is just a 600 MS bash, but a 600 MS bash from neutral can still be pretty good when used it sparingly. But one thing I would say is that either allow it to not be feightable or make it so that you can not get clipped by it to punish it, because a lot of times you will dodge attack and you'll still get hit by the finisher heavy. Highlander's already getting Testing Grounds rework, so we don't need to talk about him at the moment, so he's already getting a bunch of crap. Warden, he's also getting a Testing Grounds as well, so there's not going to be any changes that I can really say, because we already know he's getting a hyper armor zone attack of sorts on his, when you land a chain bash, which is going to be really cool, help him on team fights tremendously. And what's another? I think that's about it. I think I would love him to get like a parry riposte with his handle. That'd be kind of cool, or with his guard, so smack him in the face and go into an unblockable or shoulder bash. That'd be kind of cool. Oh wait, I forgot about Highlander. I think Spearstorm needs nerfs for sure. Damage needs to come down a little bit. Conq, he needs like a rework, man. He needs to be reverted back to Conq Testing Grounds 2. The same thing as Lawbringer. They had it right the first time and the second time, but then they decided to scrap it all together and remove his entire fun. Everything fun about the character is gone. No roll catcher on his rework, just like Lawbringer. And they made him into an unblockable machine, okay? Same thing for Lawbringer, just unblockable for days. But at least Lawbringer kind of kept some of his unique traits. He still kept Impale on Light Parry. Whereas conq loses everything. He loses his superior attacks on his zone attack. You can't even infinitely do your zone anymore for some god knows reason. And it's still 600 MS for some reason. And it's slow as a neutral zone attack. What's the point of using that move besides just having it be for heavy input? If you're going to make it so that someone has like good offense and a decent option select or light check, make it so that that's a 500 MS attack. You know, I think they should increase that to 500 MS as a zone, because most zone attacks that don't have any properties, such as orochis, shinobis, berserker, medjay, any character in general that doesn't have any hyper armor or a bash property, it needs to be 500 MS. It needs to be 500 MS, okay? This character is really hard and tricky. It's going to be an entire rework again, so you can't really do much with it at the moment. Of course, remove punch through. Punch through doesn't even exist for this character. It's pointless. Peacekeeper, like I said before, Peacekeeper, I've talked about plenty of my Peacekeeper videos. Peacekeeper needs to be able to do bleed trickle damage, okay? So when you land that, when the players don't parry your bleed top light, they need to have bleed trickle. It needs to be like 2 or 3 bleed trickle damage, and then you get enhanced light when people aren't looking at her, and then she can have access to her unblockable heavies afterwards, and then boom shakalaka. Okay, you can argue she does need that bash for external pressure and all that good stuff. I don't think she needs it if she gets this new mechanic where she can go into her unblockable, because the bleed actually trickles down as chip damage. I think that'd be kind of neat. It wouldn't make her too strong, but it would make her stand out against the entire cast, because she does stand out. She's one of the most unique characters in the entire game because of it. Do we want to get rid of the bomb freaking feet? What's it called? I don't use it that much. I use it for like time to time, but it's something that I don't like to run because it's so cheesy. Last laugh. I think we should just get rid of it. I know it's super funny, but I think we should just get rid of it. Nuxia needs another rework, or let her basically have the ability to dodge cancel after a whiff trap. I think that would help out tremendously. I've talked to quite a few people about it. They want that option. The trap's already pretty good on its own, but the ability to dodge cancel out of a whiff trap or a trap in general, really cool, like high value stuff. The one thing you could improve about it, make the traps faster, the trap animation attack faster, because in ganks or in team fights, when you land a trap, it's so slow. It makes you incredibly vulnerable, and I think that's one issue with her in team fights. That's why she's not good in team fights at all. She's more of a duelist. With Deadly Duet, I think it needs nerfs. I think it's way too good, in my opinion, because the amount of damage she does is like borderline ridiculous. Nerf it down to 10%, and I think it might be a good tier 1 still. But that's basically it for Nuxia. I'd say also every deflect should break through hyper armor, or give them very high recoveries to dodge out of their deflect, or out of the attack after you land the deflect, so that if someone throws a heavy attack with another hyper armor that is expecting a trade, you can dodge out of it or dodge into it and get another deflect, which would be really sick, because Shaman has this as well. Shaman, her kit is like a specialized 1v1, is just like Nuxia, Peacekeeper. These characters, you have to play them a certain playstyle, and you can do incredibly well with them, but you know, they excel in duels. They do not do well in team fights. The only thing they could do is like improve her hitboxes on her heavy finishers and maybe her light attacks. I think that would help her out tremendously, but I do think her bite needs nerfs. I really do. As a Shaman main or Shaman player who enjoys her a lot, her bite does way too much damage. This is 35, so if you land a bleed attack and you let the bleed tick, it's like 4 damage, and then you get a bite, and that's 35 damage. So that is a tremendous amount of damage. That is 39 damage. No, it's 40 damage. It's 40 damage because the initial attack itself, the bleed attack, is 1 damage, and then you get 4 ticks of bleed, because that's when you want to pounce right away. If you want to pounce right away, if you get a light parry, the bleed ticks once, and then you go for a bite, and that's 40 damage total, plus regenerating your health. I think the bite should only be 30 damage, in my opinion, because then you get 35 damage. 35 damage total. When you bite someone, all the bleed goes away. So if you didn't get a stack whatsoever, then you get no extra damage besides the bite itself. So a 35 damage bite is very good, but a 40 damage bite, that's a little bit overkill for just a very fast, unreactable animation for her bite. And she can bait you out. A good Shaman is so scary. super scary with those 400 ms light attacks, or her freaking 400 ms softening light attacks. You have to respect her when you are bleeding. You actually have to do, especially against a good player. A good player is gonna bait the shit out of you. That's one nerf I would do for her. I don't think she needs to be a team fighter. She needs to rely on her gank utility and her 1v1 potential. Those are like simple adjustments that I would do. When we're talking about like entire reworks or adding like huge amounts of animations, I don't think that'll happen anytime soon. That'll happen when like testing grounds, when the developers take time and pick single characters to rework. And when it comes to this video in general, I just want to do like simple fixes or adjustments or something. When it comes to feats, that'll just be like an entire testing grounds of feats being changed or removed altogether. But simple fixes on these characters, I feel like they would help the game tremendously. The health of the game would help tremendously, and people won't be as frustrated, especially as a solo queue player fighting against some of these characters. Because as soon as you see like some of these top tiers, it's like, oh man, it's Joe over. When you see these characters down here, like, it's gonna be a fun game in my opinion. Pretty fun game. That's what I would say is good game design. You know, good game design is very fun to play and fun to play against. But that's pretty much my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think on the buffs and adjustments that I wanted for each character. I do pretty much play every single character except for Nuxia, of course, and I've seen how they work in Dominion with the 4-stack, solo queue, duo stacking, all of that good stuff. And I think overall the game is in a pretty good spot. Just a few characters that we can bring down, a few nerfs that we could do on certain feats, and honestly the game will be in a really good spot. I recommend players to come back if you're on new gen and on PC, but not old gen, okay? Do not come back if you're an old gen. But on those other platforms, you know, I'd say the game is in a really good spot. A lot of characters are viable at pretty much the highest levels, and you'll have a good time as long as you aren't just playing the worst characters in the D tiers, okay? Don't play those characters, just play like the A's and B's and S tiers, and you'll be fine. But thank you so much for watching, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed it. The box is going to bed now. Bye-bye. See you later.